What's up, Barnhill family, and welcome back to your home for all things combat sports.
Yo.
So, Nick, Noche UFC main event. A lot to unpack here. Valentina Shevchenko, Alexa Grasso, they put on an incredible fight, but unfortunately there's a dark cloud hanging over the night, and unfortunately, again, it's the judging. So before we get into the X's and O's of the fight itself and what might transpire after, I want to talk about, Mike Bell's scorecard, that 10-8 in the fifth round for Alexa Grasso. I just don't see any justification for a 10-8 round, a round that Valentina was winning the majority of until she got her back taken and there was the submission attempts and some ground and pound. Did what happened at the last part of that round to you rise to the occasion of a 10-8?
Absolutely not. And I really love that you called it a dark cloud because that's what it felt like. Obviously, we were just watching it on the TV, but you could see all of the energy leave that arena when they said it was a draw. And I'm not against draws happening in this sport. As a matter of fact, it happens too much in boxing and not enough in MMA. But this fight to me did not feel like a draw. And while it was highly competitive throughout, that 10-8 round was just completely unnecessary. There's no way anybody could possibly score that round a 10-8 that was watching it with clear eyes. Especially if you go back to the early parts of the fight, Valentina Shevchenko had ground control and basically the exact same position Alexa Grasso had in the fifth round, but in the first round. And she did the same thing that Alexa Grasso did, and that only scored her a 10-9 round on that same judge's scorecard. So you start to wonder, okay, if one fighter has the exact same position but for 2 minutes longer than the other one does, how does the one with less control time of that round score a 10-8 and the person who had more score a 10-9? To me, there's a lot of questions as far as MMA judging goes, as far as combat sports judging goes, but it's really one of those things we've got to get a grip on because at some point, people are going to get really uninterested if they can't have any sort of consistency, not just fight to fight and, event from event, but state by state, there's literally different rules, and you'd never see that in any other sport. You can't go play football in California and then play under a different set of rules or with a different set of referees in New York and expect a different outcome. It's something that really needs to get fixed in MMA.
Yeah, it needs to be addressed immediately, and I think having people that are actually qualified and having them be transparent is where you have to start.
Right.
Earlier in the night, there was a fight that was stopped for a submission attempt that was clearly not even the referee thought it was a guillotine and he thought the guy was out. He clearly was not. He was just relaxing his body to try to buy himself some time to get out. And when the referee stopped the fight, immediately the fighter stood up and was like, what the heck? So if somebody is asleep in a choke, as soon as the referee pulls them apart, that fighter is going to fall to the ground, or if they're not already on the ground.
Right.
And so, that fight had to go to instant replay. It had to be reversed. And then you get to the main event. And Nevada is supposed to be the benchmark for good judging and good refereeing, if we can even call it that. You see these problems happen in New York because they're still ironing out some kinks with the MMA, rule set. Texas, it happens sometimes, California. But Nevada is supposed to be the gold standard. And
Las Vegas is the fight capital of the world.
Right. And you're telling me that the three people that judged that fight last night are the three most qualified people to sit down and judge a fight. And I'm not buying it. Yeah. I don't think they know what they're looking for. I don't think they know what they're looking at. And I don't think they know how to judge a fight. Valentina Shevchenko, as you said in one of the earlier rounds, had back control on Alexa for 3.5 minutes, and that round was scored at 10-9. But then you go to the fifth, and the last minute and a half of the round that I thought Valentina, it was a pretty even round, but I thought Valentina was winning. She gets taken down, gets her back taken. There's some ground and pound and a submission attempt, and that's supposed to be a 10-8. To me, a 10-8 round, people have to be screaming at their TVs like, man, they should stop this fight. Man, right. This is really bad. That, to me, is a 10-8. What happened last night was in no way, shape, or form a 10-8. And I'm not mad at you if you think Alexa Grasso won the fight. I think Valentina won 3 of the 5 rounds. But if you come to me and you say, I think Alexa Grasso won 3 of the 5 rounds, okay, cool. either one of those decisions I would have been okay with. What I'm not okay with is a 10-8 round being called a 10-8 round when it is clearly not, and that causing the fight to become a draw and now casting a dark shadow over what I think was one of the highest level displays of women's MMA that we've seen to date.
Yeah, I have to agree. And I think that Valentina Shevchenko and Alexa Grasso had their unfinished business. And unfortunately for all the girls at 125 that are waiting in the wings to get their opportunity, and everybody knows that the window of opportunity in MMA is very, very small. You can go right out of your prime in a matter of years waiting to get your title shot. And with the way it sits now, Alexa Grasso has beaten Valentina once. Now they've had a draw. It only seems fair to me, after how competitive last night's fight was, that we put these girls back in there again and let them compete once more. And then, of course, if Valentina gets her hand raised, now we're going to fight number 4.
Yep.
And then, you know,
it's quickly becoming Moreno versus Figgy for the women's 125 division.
Right. You throw a Mexican champion at the 125 weight class, whether it's men or women, and you're going to wind up with a quadrilogy or whatever the name of that type of fight is. Alexa Grasso did nothing wrong. And if you had that fight scored for her, I would not bat an eye at it. I think a split decision victory for Grasso is totally respectful, and I think anybody that saw it that way wouldn't be wrong. Just like anybody who saw it 3-2 for Valentina wouldn't be wrong. Now, Valentina has met her match. But when you talk about a girl who has risen to the occasion, and I remember we were talking about it before the fight when we were doing our predictions, that Alexa Grasso likely grew up over the past several years watching Valentina's every move, studying her as an idol, and then shortly after that finds herself a rival, and now she's maybe the most competitive rival that Valentina has ever had and will ever have in her entire MMA career. I think that this is exactly what Valentina needed in her career, because the Valentina story almost started to get told where it's like, I don't really know if I'm going to tune in, because we just know how bad this is going to be for her opponent. Valentina's going to go in there, play with her food like a lion does, and then take her out whenever she decides to. It's really not competitive. It's not that close, and it's not moving Valentina any further up the GOAT discussion as far as women's MMA goes, because she doesn't have anybody competitive enough to give her a real fight. Well, Alexa Grasso went in, did all the studying she needs to do, did all the training she needs to do to find out exactly how to beat Valentina Shevchenko and how to win rounds and situations. And I think she has exploited all of the holes in Valentina's game that for a long time felt like they weren't there. And I personally think the legacy that these two girls are building, whether it's a trilogy that they end up going to or a quadrilogy or whatever it is going to be better for both of their careers when it's all said and done.
Yeah, Valentina, very early on in her career, it was very apparent that she was, once the UFC implemented the women's 125 division, that was her natural weight class.
Right.
And then there was absolutely nobody that could weigh at 125 that was a woman that could defeat her at that weight class. And it really wasn't even close. Right. I mean, for Valentina to find interesting matchups and actually get fights where she gets L's on her record, she's got to go chase the GOAT, right? Mm-hmm. She's got to go up a weight class or two. Now, she didn't ever go to 145, but Amanda is naturally more, in my opinion, a 145er than she was a 135er. And the size between Valentina and Amanda, I would say comfortably is at least 25 to 30 pounds,
for
just
sure.
walk around weight. So she had to go way up out of her league just to find a challenge.
Right.
Now that's not the case anymore. Now she has Alexa Grasso. Alexa Grasso weighs the exact same as Valentina does on the scale, mm-hmm. and she gets in there and she gives her hell. And so I think it is going to be great and better for both of their careers. One, I think they're both going to be better fighters for having fought each other. Mm-hmm. And then also both of their legacies are going to be more set in stone, because it's not something where if Valentina had already retired, Alexa grabs the belt and then she goes on this long dominant run like Valentina did. People might start to question, well, is the women's 125 division really all that deep? And same questions they had for Valentina back in the day, but because these two are really just hashing it out right now and putting on these great fights and having these great moments and these awesome back and forths, I think that they'll both be better for it, and I think both of their legacies will reflect better for it as well.
Yeah, Alexa Grasso is exactly the counterpart that Valentina needed. Now, if you think about Valentina's career, it did look like there were some things missing, as in really competitive fights, and that's not her to blame. She has a group of girls in her division, and she just happens to be way better than all of them until Alexa Grasso inserts her name. But that's exactly what happened to Roy Jones Jr. He was one of the most skilled boxers you'd ever seen in this entire world, but he didn't live in an era where there were people that were as competitive as him or as skilled as him. So it kind of looked like, name-wise, there was nobody that could hang with him. Skill-wise, there was nobody that can hang with him. And then it just sort of, panned out as one of those things that he was never going to be considered one of the GOATs because of the difficulty of opponent and the strength of schedule that he had. And then you go back to some of the older days in boxing where you had the Four Horsemen and they all fought each other and they were all winning and losing against each other. And then all four of them, because those fights were so competitive and so great and legendary, now they're all four in everybody's, GOAT discussion, or they're at least all up there as far as some of the most memorable, best fighters that boxers have ever had. And if you don't have that difficult opposition to go through, people never really give you the respect that you truly deserve. And I think that even though Valentina Shevchenko has her hands full and then some with Alexa Grasso, it's going to be better for her career if she continues to go down this path and fight her once or twice more, because this is exactly what women's MMA needs. They need to have somebody they can look up to and then some way that they can try to achieve those goals to get to that skill level.
For sure. Every Muhammad Ali needs a smoking Joe Frazier.
That's right.